Welcome back, Magic players. Thanks for your patience. Hopefully you had a nice break before rejoining us here at Regional Championship 9 in Melbourne, Australia. We're coming to you from the Coburg Town Hall. We're getting towards the pointy end of what has been a healthily long day of Swiss action. And that, of course, means that we're down to the really tense final stages where people's fates are decided. I'm really excited for it, and I'm happy to cast here today with Kira Turetsky, my standard expert. How are you doing?
I'm having so much fun today. This has been a high-octane day. Our players are ready to go already, so we're going to head on down to the table. All right, and here at the table today, we've got Alex Humbly on Jeskai Oculus and Justin Chung on Is It Prowess. And these are two decks. These are familiar face decks.
Yeah, exactly. We've been covering throughout the day kind of the variety that current standard can offer because it's worth celebrating. But you also need to come back to the staple decks at some point. And these two decks have definitely proven themselves. Not only the decks, though, these players also, you know, some of the best in the room, as evidenced by the fact that they are at the top table. This is table 1 we are featuring. Now that we're getting down to the point where, you know, futures are made and lost, there is $15,000 on the line here, in addition to a Worlds invite and, you know, Pro Tour invites besides. So these players, everything to play for here. It might be a short match, but it will not be lacking in passion, as we see already both players with tapped red lands and aggressive red creatures deployed to the board, but not a mirror, not the same red creatures.
We've got Marauding Mako on the top with Alex, and we've got the tapped and attacking already, Justin Chung. We've got his Monastery Swiftspear. Back to Alex, we've got the Fear of Missing Out, pitching an Oculus, and that's going to be, of course, the namesake of the deck. The Oculus already in the bin. The real question is going to be on this next turn if Alex has Helping Hand or Recommission to get that Oculus straight out onto the board.
Well, hopefully they buy us a little bit more time before we have to discuss the card, because there's a lot of text on the Oculus, and it's obviously going to be definitive of this matchup. Kira, do you want to quickly take us through what this card is and how it enables this archetype?
So what's really important here about Abhorrent Oculus and the way that the Jeskai deck tends to play is when you hard cast an Oculus, you have to exile 6 cards from your graveyard. But if you've got the Oculus in your graveyard and you've either got a Recommission or a Helping Hand, you can just pull that bad boy out straight onto the battlefield. Importantly as well, it has this secondary part where on each of your opponent's upkeeps, you are going to manifest Dread. You're going to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, going to manifest one of them as a 2/2, and put the other one into your graveyard. So back to Justin here. We've got a Storm Chaser's Talent. Again, a card we've seen a lot of today, not only just in Is It Prowess, but also earlier we saw that in our Sultai Otters list.
I mean, it's just an amazingly versatile and powerful card, right? It's hard to find an axis this isn't winning on, and as long as you're happy with that, like 1 mana for a 1/1 token, it's not the largest body immediately, but the value you get from this card in the long run is so useful both to grindier decks, but also a deck like this Prowess deck, which means it sort of gives the deck a late game kind of out of nowhere that you wouldn't expect for such an explosive red aggro list.
All right, Alex just taking the one from the Monastery Swiftspear. No tricks from Justin either. So we've taken back to Alex, and we can see there's that Recommission in hand. The question is he going to go for it, or is that Justin holding up a Spell Pierce at the moment?
Right. So how careful do you feel you can afford to be here from Alex's position? Because obviously you know that this red-blue deck, it's super efficient on mana, very likely to have 1 mana interaction of some kind available. But at the same time, if you hesitate and hold off, try and wait for a safer window to reanimate your Haymaker creature, you're bleeding out every turn that you do that. So do you just feel forced to jam?
The really interesting thing in this position is that this is an open deck list event. And so Alex is well aware that Justin is playing 1 main deck Spell Pierce, and representing that could really hold him off. But here we see he's just going to opt in response to the block on the Mako to pump up that Otter to make a favorable block against the Marauding Mako. Now the question here, is Alex going to go for the Recommission? And I think this is a good position too. You've got your Prowess opponent tapped out at this moment. It's a pretty good chance to fire off a Recommission.
And, I mean, if the Recommission does land, especially main deck, how many answers does Justin realistically have for it? Because that's like kind of the worst case scenario for the Izzet deck. Not only a large flying blocker that's going to make it difficult to find profitable attacks, but you don't even necessarily need to block with the Oculus itself. It's also a token generator.
The best thing is just going to be that constant value generation in Manifesting Dread on each of Justin's upkeeps. That's going to put a lot of bodies down and a lot of 2/2s in front of the kind of creatures that Justin is running in this Izzet deck. They're not going to be able to attack or block very favorably in either situation. Got a bit of a rules question here.
Yeah, we give the players time to figure out what's going on precisely. But I mean, right now, Alex is holding up okay under the assault from. Is it Prowess? Looks like has to concede the loss of that Mako there. That Mako has been a really interesting card as far as it's helped shape the development of this Oculus list, because the Oculus Reanimate part of the deck has been around for a little while now, but it seemingly has kind of surged back into high contention in sort of recent weeks. And it's because this discard package has become a much more aggressive and predominant part of the game plan.
Absolutely. The Mako as well, providing a discard ability with that cycling, also really beneficial in a variety of decks that it shows up in.
It's always good to have a card like that where it's a lot of the time it's great, but if it's not great, it's never bad, because at worst you just, throw it back away and find a bigger fish. And especially when you're...
You find a bigger fish off of the shark, yeah.
I wish I could say that I'd planned that out, but no, and in a deck like this, obviously cards in graveyard become a resource as well, because it doesn't have the delve mechanic, but as I think we discussed when Oculus was last on the feature table, or our co-commentators did, it's effectively like a hard-coded delve spell. You must get a number of cards in your graveyard to be able to unlock that hard castable card from hand. And once you do, I mean, at 3 mana, it is a really realistic play. So the deck has a lot more consistency than some of the more sort of combo-based Reanimator shells, if you want to call it that.
Well, what's also really interesting about the Marauding Mako is it gives it the ability to trigger another Marauding Mako that's on the field already. You activate the cycling ability of one you've got in your hand when you'd rather exchange it for a different card, and you still get to benefit and put the +1 counter on the Mako that's on the battlefield. And it's just really elevated the deck. And what we saw as well is Azorius Oculus was an iteration of the deck that was prior to a little bit of Aether Drift and a little bit of Tarkir Dragonstorm as well. And the addition of red has really helped push the deck over the edge. It also gives it a bit more of that aggressive slant and opens it up to a better ability to function in the sideboard.
Yeah, because previously it was kind of a one-dimensional deck, and that makes it a lot easier to sideboard against, especially because the dimension you're attacking, it does kind of fold a bit to graveyard hate. It makes it much, much harder to utilize the Oculus in any way, whereas now you have all these red threats that can use the graveyard, but also just really help smooth out your draw and play a fundamental aggressive game. And Alex Humbly, obviously, I'm sure has leaned on both aspects to get this far in the event, but we'll need all of it again to get past someone as formidable as Justin. Now, we are seeing an Oculus in play, so this, whatever has evolved during that, brief time away from the game, it does look to be good for the Oculus player.
Well, we can see a recommission in the graveyard, so Alex Humbly very confidently firing that off while his opponent was tapped out. And we've got the Manifest token. Here comes the Corey Steelcutter, and this is really a formidable matchup between these two. This is kind of the, me versus you.
Yeah, so both players now getting out, if not their namesake cards, definitely kind of the boogeyman cards of the deck, the cards everyone's talking about. That Steelcutter cutting through the format that existed prior to its printing and shaping the world anew. The Monk tokens coming in, reminiscent of course, old Prowess favorites like Monastery Mentor, to once again threaten the livelihoods of, non-Prowess players everywhere. But at least we see the benefit of the Oculus, right? It's been returned to hand. Great use of Into the Floodmoor, but at least you have a blocker left behind. You're not just completely toast for getting blown out there by that 1 mana bounce spell.
What we see as well is that Manifest was a fear of missing out, had to block against the Corey Steelcutter Monk. And what's so interesting about the way that this deck works is, especially Justin's Is It Prowess deck, that it actually gives you more Monastery Swiftspears.
Yes, exactly. It's very much a thematic deck, even without trying to be. It just turns out that all of these good cards are like these prowess-having monks. It's very thematic. But, Alex clearly having the resources around to block, and as we continue to trade cards, it feels as though the Oculus deck is favored in the long game, right? It is true that the 2 cards that Justin has in play, those sticky permanents in the Steelcutter and the Talent, give the deck more game than you'd expect over time, but I feel like the Oculus and the other card advantage engines Alex has leave him comfortable right now.
Absolutely. The Jeskai deck doesn't mind going long, and looks like we have Delirium here as well, so Alex able to get in for a good attack to tap, untap, and have that extra combat. And here comes the Helping Hand, and Oculus is back.
Yeah, exactly. Every time you think you've dealt with this card, somehow it's here again. Either you have another Helping Hand, or maybe the Oculus just manifested enough cards that now you can hardcast a second copy. Also, that's a key card that hit the graveyard right there. I think every time we've seen this deck around the top tables, that may have been doing the most damage, which is pretty impressive out of all the creatures in the deck.
And that is Proft's Eidetic Memory. It's a legendary enchantment, and it draws a card when it enters, and at the beginning of combat, for each card besides the first card you've drawn, it puts counters on a creature, and that's really consequential, again, when you have cards like that Marauding Mako, or even an Abhorrent Oculus, a flying attacker, really difficult to deal with this Is It Prowess deck.
It's kind of interesting because it's not really a prowess. We can see it up on the screen right now. That's a lot of text, but it's not technically a prowess card. It feels like it's almost, in some cases, when you high roll, outdoing prowess at its own game, right? It's such an efficient stat generator when you're trying to race.
And here comes Justin with a bunch of extra triggers now. We've triggered the Corey Steelcutter because we've cast 2 spells this turn. So we've got another, essentially a Monastery Sorcerer, because that 1/1 Monk with Prowess. We're going to go ahead and sleight of hand as well, look at some cards off the top. I think I saw a stock up in there as well. So that could set Justin up really well for this next turn cycle. But giving Alex even more turns is going to put even more manifest tokens onto the battlefield. I think Alex is going to come out on top in this exchange.
Yeah, I think Alex kind of saw this coming or understands how the matchup plays, that you can't just let Justin hang around. And that's why we saw no hesitation, even against such an explosive opponent, of getting aggressive with that fear of missing out, right? Because now every little bit of damage you've done to Justin's life gives you more confidence that you can close this game. You don't need to help to fade those stock ups or, rely on Justin not drawing. That is one of only 2 main deck Slick Shot show-offs, by the way, and always a threatening card. But seeing it here on defense has to make you feel good as the Oculus player.
Justin passing back as well with no combat this turn does not a good sign for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, the Prowess decks do not like to block as a rule, I feel.
Really important as well, Justin is leaving up that Slick Shot show-off, say that 5 times fast, Slick Shot show-off against the Abhorrent Oculus to have to make that block pretty unfavorably in this position.
Is there any way that this isn't even really a bluff? You only have 1 mana available. Like, normally you might think, oh, with only a couple of mana, I could at least threaten the trade here, but you're not going to really be able to threaten that Oculus at all. It's almost chump blocking time, it seems, for Justin, unless there's another Into the Floodmore or similarly efficient answer here to turn the way this combat's looking up.
Definitely, you don't want to be playing a game where Jeskai Oculus is being the aggressor.
Well, we may not be playing that game for much longer if you're in Justin's seat. Already down to 10 life and with a lot of damage headed across the table. Of course, that Manifest Dread, I suppose they're not tokens, but the body's kind of accruing even over the short couple of turns that the horror's been around. And you can just see why it's worth building an entire archetype around this Oculus card, right? Even though the deck's diversified its threat pool now, this is still the big money item that you want, landing on the battlefield.
What do you think is under that Manifest token as well? I have to imagine it's not another Oculus because it hasn't been turn face up yet, but that is something Alex could choose to do in his second main phase and surprise, and then you'll have 2 Manifests to deal with on each of Justin's upkeeps.
Yeah, it's interesting because not all of the creatures in the deck are sort of that impactful to flip up. So sometimes even if you manage to, win in that way and get a creature that you can turn over, it's not necessarily fantastic unless you need like flying as a keyword, but maybe. I mean, that's a great way to win a game explosively if your opponent's not ready for it.
Really interesting choice here from Justin, going to Monstrous Rage on the Slick Shot show-off for a block. And yes, there it is. Alex is going to flip over an Oculus, and that is game 1 to Alex.
Well, I avoided guessing, but you confidently put your money where your mouth was and were completely correct. Alex humbly, very talented manifester of Dread there, and Justin forced to pick it up, even though that was a pretty solid draw, it felt like, for Is It Prowess. Like, the cards didn't really fail Justin so much as the Oculus deck just had that under control.
Unfortunately, the Is It Prowess deck doesn't have a ton of tools to deal with a 5 toughness creature, and if you recommission it as well, it comes in with an extra +1 counter, and then it's a 6 toughness creature, and that unfortunately is a little bit too big for the Is It Prowess decks to really effectively deal with.
Yeah, Monstrous Rage on Slick Shot Show-Off has been a game-winning combination all weekend, but to see that in order to try and chump block and trade with a creature that then is reanimated for 1 mana shows you how bad the resource swings can be in this matchup. But perhaps after sideboard, that's going to change for Justin.
So no doubt Justin's looking to bring in both of those Ghost Vacuums straight away. We need to get those Oculuses or Oculi out of the graveyard as swiftly as possible.
Yeah, the oculi. I like that. The oculi, plural. What would be the collective noun of oculi? A bunch, a ball, a face of oculi, if you have 2, I guess.
Oh, that's actually really good. A face of oculi. 2 eyes.
Yeah.
Well, look, we're clearly going to bring in Ghost Vacuum if we're Justin sitting here. Additionally, as well, really interesting inclusions. We've got Sunspine Links in the side as well, and that could do a lot of passive damage to Alex base, because Sunspine Links is going to be dealing damage based off of the non-basic lands, and Jeskai, unfortunately, having to run a slew of non-basics to be able to make that mana base work. We're in a bit of a standard format where 3 color is a little bit difficult right now, despite having, fast lands, pain lands. We're in a bit of a tricky spot. Even Verges, it's a bit difficult to comfortably manage 3 color.
It's subjective to say, obviously, because some people really like to be able to play like sort of greedy formats and decks that can access a lot of the best cards. But I feel like we're in a good compromise position. You absolutely can play even a 3-color aggressive deck like Oculus that kind of needs its mana untapped early. But sometimes you're going to pay a few life for it, and that few life can make the difference, especially against, these prowess decks. Maybe that's part of why they've been so popular and successful. Although this is one of the few prowess players left at the top tables. I think Justin's the only undefeated prowess player, and a lot of them have taken more than one loss at this point. So that deck, which was the most populous on the day, it's definitely been targeted, and a lot of the people targeting it seem to have been successful.
Well, in Alex's sideboard, there is a card I'm looking at straight away that is a silver bullet to Justin's Is It Prowess deck, and that is High Noon. And High Noon is one of my favorite cards in the format, I have to be honest, and that is going to shut down Corey Steelcutter like nobody's business. High Noon, of course, is an enchantment that says each player can't cast more than one spell each turn. Uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit more subtle when you've got a silver bullet card in your sideboard, but this does feel like it is it player must feel a little bit hard done by. They printed this card just to spite you. When your whole deck is operating on the idea of generating value from prowess triggers and being able to surprise your opponent by how many you do in one turn, being able to stock up and then play a cheap spell to kind of keep battlefield present, this just ruins all of that. And as you said, it kind of just turns off the Steel Cutter completely.
Well, and it absolutely, in a lot of ways, nukes the Corey Steelcutter. It's essentially a dead card because you have no ability to trigger Flurry if the High Noon is on the battlefield, because you need to cast 2 spells in a turn to trigger Corey Steelcutter to create that 1/1 Monk with Prowess. And if you can't cast more than 1 spell each turn, that's a dead card that is really only going to be effective for its equip cost. All right, and now our players have shuffled up, and it's a fast start for Justin, to say the least. We've got that Storm Chaser's talent down turn 1.
And you see the hand is full of blue interactive spells, it seems like. So Justin, not afraid of keeping that hand, but maybe not the most clock early on. And that might give Alex time to draw into those really powerful sideboard cards. I don't know. Obviously, it's a different kind of deck for Justin. You're fine often just siding in some slightly more optimized interaction, but Justin doesn't really have anything comparable to that High Noon, right, to just turn off Alex's deck. The Ghost Vacuum is good, but it won't stop you getting beaten down by just, 3/3s and larger creatures.
The other card that Justin's going to look to use in this toolkit is going to be that Lithomantic Barrage. That's going to be really important for the first Oculus, but noticeably only 1 copy in the sideboard. So that means the second and third copies of Abhorrent Oculus are probably going to be quite safe.
Yeah, really interesting decisions, but Justin has made some, this is not quite the stock Is It Prowess list. So Justin clearly has made some real decisions about the format, and so far they've guided him to the top table here deep in our event. So I have to trust in his deck building skill now, and has at least shown the top decking skill to draw that Ghost Vacuum.
This is really quite a... And what is this? Turn 2 from Justin. Another Storm Chaser's talent, followed up by a Ghost Vacuum, getting in with a big hit on that first Otter token.
Yeah, you're so right, though, to say reflexively go to say turn 3 or later, because look how many permanents Justin has in play. This is a huge board. Surely already 4 or even 5 turns have passed.
Alex facing a difficult decision right now. What's that? That is a Fear of Missing Out coming down now as well. Going to go to draw, discard as well. So discards a Glacial Dragon Hunt.
Interesting.
Draws, and we'll get a counter on the Mako as well.
So obviously the Ghost Vacuum is not a Rest in Peace or a Leyline of the Void. Your cards do go to the graveyard. The deck will still somewhat function. But tell me, as Alex now, how do you feel about discarding cards? Are you trying to kind of bait the vacuum? Can you try and maybe discard cards in volume and get some value out of the yard? Or do you just have to sort of accept that that part of your deck is turned off for the time being?
It's definitely a difficult spot to be in. That's one of Justin's silver bullet cards, because it's going to target that Abhorrent Oculus the second it hits the graveyard. And it's really going to be a difficult thing to interact with on Alex's side. We've got an Opt coming down, which will trigger Prowess. Draw a card.
I mean, maybe Alex for now isn't necessary. Obviously, you have to be aware of the Ghost Vacuum. It could even, become a game-winning threat in itself later on in the game. But for now, I think you're just looking at those otters and going, okay, I have to not die to Prowess, first of all.
That's definitely something you have to worry about. It's in the name. Is it Prowess? And certainly, every creature in this deck effectively has Prowess, or does have Prowess in one way or another. Slingshot Showed, of course, not explicitly having Prowess, but definitely feels like it does.
Yeah, it has an interesting variant of Prowess that makes it a bit more of an offensive card. And I think it's very interesting that one of Justin's most prominent deck building decisions is to actually go down a couple of copies. There's only 2 in the 75, and instead we see a different Prowess creature that's often more of a sideboard piece, Drake Hatcher, in the main.
Really interesting to make this decision as well. A lot of the more, what I would say streamlined as a prowess decks are playing for Slick Shot Show Off and then putting Drake Hatchers into the sideboard. But clearly this decision has worked in Justin's favor. He's at the top table, and having that a bit more flexibility is putting him in a really good position.
Yeah, it buys you a couple of extra sideboard slots, and if you think that that's the best card in the mirror, then you're sort of pre-sideboarded against the most popular deck in the field. Alex, though, not quite the mirror match, a different kind of red-blue X, sort of aggressive / tempo deck, and it's so good to see, if you're an Alex fan at least, Proft's Eidetic Memory come down, because this is the non-graveyard part of the deck, right? Nothing that Ghost Vacuum really does to this.
Definitely, if I'm Alex, I'm sweating a little bit. This is not really the position that I want to be in right now. Facing down a Ghost Vacuum, kind of unable in a way to put an Oculus into the graveyard because you just know it's going to go.
Is there a world where, obviously Alex would need a lot more mana, but there are several cards that can discard like multiple cards at a time. The deck can churn pretty efficiently. Maybe at some point you can fight through the Ghost Vacuum and at least get enough volume of cards in the yard to meet that pseudo delve requirement for the Oculus?
If I'm drawing extra cards and I'm cycling through my deck, if I'm Alex, I'm looking for that high noon pretty much as quickly as possible. That's going to be, your, again, silver bullet card. That's going to be really important to slowing Justin down because Justin's on a bit of a tear right now.
Yeah.
Really running away with this match. Currently, Justin 18, Alex 9.
That's a crucial bit of cheap interact. Like, Alex desperately needed a play there, or we might have been just about going to the next game. Torch the Tower, not going to bail you out of the situation completely, but at least responding to that into the Floodmaw, reducing the damage by half. And you still have the Mako on the field, so I feel like it's not over yet for Alex, but you're right, definitely on the back foot.
The difficult thing as well is there are so many consequential cards in Alex's deck that really do rely on the graveyard. We saw that fear of missing out was, pretty much the game ender in game 1. And so losing access to a lot of the cards needed to achieve Delirium due to Ghost Vacuum exiling them from your graveyard, it's going to put you in a bit of a tight spot.
Yeah, it sort of just becomes a almost Grizzly Bear at that point, which is, look, you're happy for a 2-mana blocker against the Izzet deck. It's worth some life points or an interactive spell from hand, but, you are hoping for more to be able to turn the matchup around at this point, especially when you're already down to 8 life. You really do not have a lot of time left to reverse this board state, and with only 3 lands, Alex, the number of lines which could bail you out here are shrinking.
I was just about to say we are stifled on lands right now. Poor Alex is in a not fantastic position. Let's hope we can rip one off the top here.
So Justin just passed back with full mana untapped, which is interesting. Are you saving up to try and see what Alex plays, cancel that out, and then kind of steamroll on your turn and end the game?
It's an interesting position to be in for sure, especially because we've got that prowess ability on the Otter ready to go, but choosing not to activate it because Justin either thinks he can't make it through the Mako, or would rather play a little bit more defensively so as to, again, take control of the match and control a bit more what's happening. And we can see that here. Steamcore Scholar coming down for Alex is going to be able to put more cards into the graveyard and is going to pump up that Mako even bigger. And what Alex is doing really effectively here is making it difficult for Justin to attack in right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, obviously, as you said, the prowess deck we see just aggressive and aggressive and aggressive. But even in this situation where you're ahead, not attacking, I guess you need more prowess creatures in play to actually make that play efficient for you. You don't want to spend your resources too cheaply and run out of gas. Even though the Oculus deck can't really suddenly gain a ton of life or turn the game around in that way, you're waiting for the right moment. And I think you may have just created the right moment here with Into the Floodmaw, again, returning that sizable Mako to hand.
Really difficult position for Alex right now, but we are seeing a combination of this Jeskai Oculus deck that I really love, and that's Steamcore Scholar coupled with Proft's Eidetic Memory, because when the Steamcore Scholar enters, you're going to draw 2 cards, and that's later at your combat step. Proft's Eidetic Memory is going to put 2 +1/+1 counters on that weird detective, and that's going to make it a 4/4 with flying and vigilance on the turn it comes down, which is really impressive. And it makes Steamcore Scholar a much more playable card and hit with another Into the Floodmaw.
Yeah, I think that's we have to give some credit. That is the talent showing for Justin, both as a player and the permanent on the battlefield, picking that back up. But yeah, repeated use of this 1-mana bounce spell really showing its devastating effect in this matchup, crushing these relatively expensive creatures from Alex and leaving the player who's starved on mana already even further behind.
We can see as well in Alex's hand that there is no 4th land drop there either. So this is a really difficult position. Alex can choose to play the Steamcore Scholar again, get another 4/4 flying with vigilance, but we've got another Stormchaser's talent ready to be leveled up, which will just pick up that Into the Floodmaw again and bounce it back to hand. And this little prowess otter is just chipping away at Alex's life right now.
Yeah, I guess if you're a glass half full person in Alex's position, you could argue, well, if there was a second prowess creature, I'd be already dead. But wow, actually, the one-off main deck Sheltered by Ghosts, arguably the biggest play you could have in this spot. And this would actually neuter that play because Justin only has exactly enough mana to do the recur into the Floodmaw play. So now at least you force the prowess player to have a different copy of an interactive spell here.
Really important. Also really consequentially taking away that otter token. And that's been the thing that's threatening Alex's life total right now. So really important because it also means that this is an unfavorable removal for Justin. If he chooses to remove the Marauding Mako, doesn't get anything back, removes, a consequential card on the field, gets rid of the lifelink for Alex, which is something Alex really wants in this position, is going to be that lifelink and the ability to grow the Mako even better and gain more life. But choosing to take the otter token, a token that can't come back once it's been removed, really important for Alex here.
Really not a stretch to say that was the best top deck Alex could have had. It must be a little bit bittersweet to know that that's one of the few cards you could have used to get Ghost Vacuum off the table and kind of unlock your deck, because you must feel so anchored down right now trying to play through this effect, but you cannot let that otter be around to kill you.
Definitely not. And we see Justin here taking the move to level up the Storm Chaser's talent, getting back into the Floodmaw. This to me says that there's no other favorable interaction that Justin really has right now for this Mako. If we're making the decision to pick up the Into the Floodmaw, that's to me saying, I'm going to pay the ward cost on the Mako now that's being provided by Sheltered by Ghosts just to get it off your battlefield. And I don't think that's really where Justin wants to be right now.
Yeah, it's crazy how one thing can recontextualize that play from this is the line that's going to win Justin the game, and Alex has almost no way around it, to Sheltered by Ghosts basically making it an unfavorable line, and now the Steamcore Scholar has room to come down. You've created a breath of air, one gasp of freedom, and fortunately for the Oculus deck, with Prophetic Memory in play, this is going to get you a lot of currency in terms of presence on board.
So not only is Alex about to discard 2 cards here and put 2 counters onto the Mako, the Prophetic will trigger and put 2 more counters onto the Mako. This Mako is about to be a 5/5 with lifelink, and that's going to be a huge swing in Alex's favor.
Justin put down a tap land last turn, and exactly the amount of mana you have available, you could Into the Floodmaw and gift, I believe, to reset the Sheltered by Ghosts itself, but because there was a token under it originally, that feels like such a back-breaking level of disadvantage just to avoid your opponent gaining some life. Alex might just kind of buy his way back into the game here.
I'm so impressed with how, and again, top decking's a skill. We're drawing the cards that we need, but so impressed with how Alex has managed to stay afloat on still 3 lands. We are still stuck on lands, and we can see he's chosen to discard a land as well off of that Steamcore Scholar. That, to me, he's probably picked up a better land to play for this turn. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we're choosing to play a land and not just put one in the bin.
I agree with you. It's such a skill, and it's really important, especially because this deck, right, it should be a deck where you're not really expecting to have this much trouble finding lands, right? We see how much velocity it has, how it's able to dig through its deck, draw and discard cards almost at will, and to still be stuck on mana, you could just throw your hands up and say, well, I played in a way where I drew my expected amount of lands and I didn't, so I lost, but I don't feel bad. Alex, though, trying to think turns ahead, use every scrap of mana available and just think, how do I survive one more turn? How do I survive one more turn? How do I create a gap so I can develop my board a little bit more? And now starting to get back, that invisible momentum bar shifting back towards Jeskai. Justin must be sweating a little tiny bit.
The life totals have come so close to each other now. Justin as well also going to be in a position to eventually activate that Ghost Vacuum and get a bunch of value off of it. The only issue really being, for what?
Yeah, I'm interested. I love to see Ghost Vacuum win a game, but I still don't know if I've seen a tournament match where that has been the decisive activation. On the other hand, it's not the only permanent with an expensive activated ability that Justin has on board.
Definitely going to be really consequential here. Whatever Justin has drawn, he needs to be in a better position, or this Mako is really going to be the deciding factor for Alex.
Is there any world where Justin does not reset that aurored up Mako, right? Like that is almost non-negotiable at this point.
At this point, though, giving Alex an extra creature could spell defeat, and that's you have to gift a fish. You have to gift a fish. I present you with a fish in order to bounce a non-creature.
Gift a fish or pay the ward, right?
Or pay the ward. There's 2 options here. They're both really not in Justin's favor.
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, that's just seems to be the way that the match has gone, where Justin, who was, again, on the cusp of winning a couple of turns ago, went the top deck of that single sheltered by Ghost. The Ghosts have provided such shelter today, and an iron wall around Alex Humbly's deck and life total. And now suddenly things are a lot more even. Justin, not out of it though yet, as expected, does concede the expensive bounce spell to get rid of the Mako temporarily and the sheltered permanently, but not much of a board left and not much resource in hand to speak of.
This puts Alex back in a pretty unfavorable position. He's really going to be struggling. Again, thankfully, we've now got that 4th land, but we're still in a position kind of precariously balanced right now. Torch the Tower, going to exile that Monastery Swiftspear, and again, Justin's board is clear of creatures. Lauren hitting the Ghost Vacuum, beautiful.
I was already about to say that despite Alex's lack of mana, we've still hit the point where enough volume of cards have been traded that the graveyard is starting to fill up faster than the Ghost Vacuum can vacuum up all that junk. But now with the vacuum cleaner turned off, Alex Humbly's graveyard is back online in full. You can see a slight grin returning to the face of that. It must have been a stressful few turns there, but now perhaps hope, light at the end of the tunnel. For Justin, it looks like it might be a train.
We're tapping out here to fully level up the Storm Chaser's talent. I don't know if I like this play. I think this is a really precarious position for Justin.
If all you have that's relevant is one other 1-mana spell, then this seems like at least a solid move to gain some value, but that in itself is a pretty sad position.
The Lauren as well is going to give the ability to trigger that Prophecydetic Memory really well. It comes at the cost, of course, of giving your opponent an extra card, but it really is going to end up working in Alex's favor with this Steam Core Scholar and another Mako coming down.
Yeah, in most situations, you probably wouldn't dare give Justin more cards, but here, Justin's already tapped out, so there's not even the chance of drawing another copy of Into the Flood or any kind of interaction, and Alex is really starting to put the pedal to the metal here, applying more and more pressure to Justin's deck. Not built for the comeback is it prowess, even though it has some ability to go long, and Justin is stoically handling the situation, but you can feel the options diminishing.
2 more cards into the graveyard, another Profts and a land. This is going to trigger the Marauding Mako, making it a 3/3. And we're also going to, later this turn, once we head to combat, that Prophecydetic Memory is going to trigger. And smart move, we're going to put the counters onto the Steam Core Scholar. This is a not fun attack, I'll tell you. If you're Justin sitting staring this down, this is not my favorite thing.
Yeah. It's interesting to see the Izzet Prowess deck in a situation where even though it's full of such cheap cards, and Justin has quite a number of lands, the mana, with how expensive the costs on these activated abilities are, and those are sort of the only plays available, the tempo slowed so much down that Alex now has time to spread out the board, really develop, and even picking up a single Into the Floodmoor is really not going to do much for Justin. I'm not sure what the top deck could be here that he's hoping for, but has to play it out here and try and dig up some kind of miracle.
Justin is facing down dead on board next turn with those 2 Steam Core Scholars. We're hoping for, if I'm Justin, I am currently hoping for a Burst Lightning, you know, potentially if there's 1 more Into the Flood Maw left, and we're leveling up the Storm Chaser's talent to get back an instant or sorcery, choosing to get an Opt here, which is going to trigger the fully leveled up Storm Chaser's talent to give you another Otter with Prowess.
I mean, at this point, it's not even just about staving off death as Justin. The game is not going to get better for you as it goes longer. I mean, I suppose if you can somehow fully level all these talents and start producing mass Otters, but you're dealing with flying creatures, so those are not going to stall the game forever. You almost have to hope, did he board in Sunspine Links, and maybe you can somehow burst Alex over 2 turns, but it's tough to find the light. That Prophecydetic Memory has done so much damage since it first came down. That's
There's
actually
the handshake, and that is game, going 2-0 to Alex on Jeskai Oculus.
I mean, the 2-0 belies how competitive that just was. That was a thrilling matchup, as befits our top table here late in day 1. But yeah, Alex Humbly showing some incredible tenacity to play through that surprising lack of mana and somehow triumph over a really, really strong Izzet Prowess player. As
Thomas, that was tense. That was so tense.
I feel like I've been clenching my hands, I just realized, for about 10 minutes. Just kind of like, I'm not even in this match. Neither of these are my favorite decks. Obviously, I have huge respect for these players, but you just get so sucked into how engrossing those, few crucial turns in the middle were. And what a top deck by Alex to find that Sheltered by Ghosts.
I was so incredibly impressed. Alex not crumbling under the pressure, not even blinking. Amazingly well done from Alex. He's moving on 6-0 into round 7.
Yeah.
Amazing.
They don't call him Alex Crumbly. He's Alex Humbly by name and by nature. A humble winner there, we would hope. I'm sure he is. And, maybe getting very perilously close now to kind of securing a spot in day 2. Obviously, a couple of rounds still to play. We're looking at 8 rounds of Swiss here, everybody. But when there's so many prizes on the line, if you're still X-0 at this point, one of a very few players left in the room, you must feel ecstatic about how you've played today.
Well, I can't wait to see what the next 2 rounds bring us. We're going to be right back for round 7.